Hi, welcome to Sylvie's technique vlog. I'm going to be doing a short public version of this where I introduce a technique that I'm working on. My technique vlogs are kind of like a diary of the techniques that I'm actually working on. And so that will be public. It gives you an idea for things that you can work on in what you're doing, or kind of concepts or strategies that you can implement in your own training. And then for my patrons, as a thank you, I have a much longer version where I go into more detail about what I'm doing and kind of examples and things like that. So this is the public version first, and if you're interested in watching more, you can click on the link in the description below and become a patron and watch the full video there. So today's technique vlog is something that I'm calling ambient footwork. So what do I mean by that? Ambience is kind of like, imagine two people, like a scene in a movie, two people are having a conversation in a cafe. The conversation is the actual dialogue, it's driving the story, it's making plot points or introducing you to the characters. Like, it has like kind of meaning and direction. But in order for the scene to be realistic, in order for it to have like ambience, you have ambient noise in the background, which will be like the sounds of a cafe. So it's, like things clinking, other people talking, it's just kind of in the background. So ambient footwork is like this in that it's the stuff that you're doing between everything else. So there is footwork that is necessary for strikes. Like, this is the footwork for stepping forward on a strike. This is the footwork for a kick. This is the footwork for evading and countering and things like that. Those are kind of like chunked out pieces of footwork. Ambient footwork is literally how you create your music and your rhythm and everything in between. It's how you move. The kind of tricky thing about this is that everyone has ambient footwork, whether you're aware of it or not. So the technique that I'm working on is becoming aware of it and then actually trying to kind of shape it. For me personally, up until I started working on this on purpose, my ambient footwork is actually just being flat-footed and standing still. So I have this problem where, like, I'll throw the strike and then I just kind of come back to this neutral, very stopped position. I've referred to it as air pockets before, where it's just this kind of like everything stops for a second and then I have to like restart. So ambient footwork is a way to create like an element, like if there are fish that are moving around, they're in an element of water. Water is the ambient footwork that like carries it all around. So I'm gonna show you what this looks like, right? So the most recent and kind of the thing that really got me thinking a lot about ambient footwork and really working on it, like actually getting myself to work on it, was our first patron session with Wang Chenoi Sorpalanchai. Wang Chenoi is incredible. He's a lot like Karahat, but like meaner. He doesn't think of himself as a femur fighter. He thinks of himself as like an aggressive fighter, which is true because he's very scary, but he has incredible femur movements all the time, and he has this ambient footwork that he, in the first session, you can go and watch the Muay Thai Library session in the Muay Thai Library as a patron. In the first session, he really has me focusing on what I'm calling ambient footwork. And what's really important in practicing it is that you have to picture an opponent in front of you, because what you're doing is responding to and shaping what they're doing. So my ambient footwork up until this point looks a lot like this, right? So you have your thing where you're like pop, pop, pop. And now I'm just kind of like standing here. A lot of people will have ambient footwork that's the like Muay Thai rock, right? So you're just kind of moving like this. That's fine, except it's just super, super narrow. Like, it's not enough. So what this footwork from Wang Chenoi and actually a session coming up in the library with Hippie that we filmed on the same day with Wang Chenoi, he also worked on this. You want to be kind of like moving around all the time. So this is my ambient footwork. I'm changing where my weight is. I'm able to respond to where my opponent is going. If they're moving, I want to be kind of keeping on them. So I'm doing all of this, and then I can go into my strikes and then back into the ambient footwork like this. Something you have to be really careful of is that you cannot let your ambient footwork be meaningless. It's really, really, really important that when you bring your consciousness into it as something that you're going to start working on, bring your consciousness into it, bring it into your feet. So what Wang Chenoi really emphasized was picturing your opponent. So when you're playing on the bag or even in shadow, you want to be picturing how you're moving your opponent whether you're kind of cutting them off or whether you're evading them, things like this. So you want all of the movements in your feet to have meaning. Work on it in shadow. You can actually go and watch some of your favorite fighters and kind of see what their footwork is between everything and copy it a little bit. But it's really, really important that it's yours. You don't want to be turning it into like combinations. You don't want it to be like this kind of, everyone when they shadow box have this kind of mindless, like I do it too. I do this thing where I do like 1, 1, 2 in my shadow boxing. I don't think I've ever thrown that in a fight, not once. It's not something I actually throw, but I do it in shadow boxing because you kind of like zone out and just do patterns that you've always done. Your feet are doing that too. So you want to create not patterns, you want to create like thoughtful movement in. So when I'm blocking, I'm not just bringing it up because now I should block. I'm bringing it up because I'm picturing someone in front of me, and that's where my block would come up. So I'm kind of like structuring someone. And it's all the stuff in between. It's not the footwork that gets you to go. It's the footwork that moves everything around. So that is the public version. I'm going to be talking more about this, giving more examples, and talking in more detail about what I'm doing for my patrons. So if you're not yet a patron, click on the link in the description below. If you are a patron, you're already watching this, thank you. And I will go into more detail about how I'm working on this and examples of it that you can watch in the Muay Thai library.